Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 451 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Eilon, CEO of Greek University. I'm a speaker and an author. Our fifth book just came out. It's called Perseverance and How to Be a Great Fraternity or Sorority Alumnus. So I want you to go and pick up that book on Amazon or Barnes & Noble today. We call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there is nothing like great food to bring college students together. Fun fact, I do have my idea worth spreading for my TEDx talk, but I'm still working on completing my dissertation and I'm going to defend in February. So I promise I will get you that TEDx talk in order very quickly as soon as I complete that dissertation. So be on the lookout for that TEDx talk in 2025. I promise you it's coming. Now let's talk about our next guest, who is a TEDx star. Now, here's the interesting thing. The New York Times did a study that showed that only 25% of people actually know what their life's purpose is. People are wandering through life unsure about why they're here on Earth. Most of us will start with why to find their purpose, but in reality, we should end with it. As a former collegiate athlete at John Carroll University to playing basketball overseas in China, Tyler transitioned his competitive nature into growing and scaling businesses. He has scaled dozens of companies by helping them grow collectively by more than $10 million. He has worked with some of the biggest names in the personal development industry, like Tony Robbins, Daymond John, Kevin O'Leary, and Grant Cardone, to name a few, earning him a spot as a presidential ambassador for global entrepreneurship. When Tyler is not working on scaling brands, he spends time with his beautiful wife. He goes to the beach in Florida and even serves at his church. Welcome to the show, Tyler.
Thank you. Thank you for that amazing introduction, Mike. Pleasure to be here, man. Excited to give a lot of value to you guys.
Yeah, this is going to be absolutely great. And I know our audience is in for a big treat. I wanted to kind of start with your youth because I think this was really a formative time for you because at that point you were obese, you had a speech impediment early on. So how did you get beyond that struggle in order to communicate?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I think anyone that's listening here, everyone comes from a different background, different financial status. They grow up in different areas. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, very humble beginnings. One of the things that I had was a loving and supporting family, right? And so everyone has to look at what are the blessings, what are the positives within their situations, because we all have negatives, we all have positives. And for me, and I always tell people this is, there's a reason why I was born in Cleveland, in the financial situation, in the family situation that I was born in. And there's a reason why everyone listening here, and even yourself, was born into the situation that they were in. And my situation was, my parents worked all the time. They always wanted to provide for my brother and I. And it was one of those situations where my father and my uncles and all the men in my family, they worked in the steel mill in Cleveland, Ohio. And so it was a very blue collar, hardworking family. And they taught that really instilled work ethic in me. And then, throughout that process, though, my family and my parents were always working. And so my brother and I were always at home, and my grandma essentially raised my brother and I. And through that process and experiences, every decision was dictated by financials. Well, because I would always ask my grandma and my family, like, hey, why aren't my parents at home more? Why can't we spend more time? Or why can't we do this? Well, they have to work to make money. And, quickly at a young age, I learned that finances dictated the way we make decisions. And that kind of dictated what we ate. We ate out a lot. So throughout that process, my family didn't have a lot of time. They usually would bring home some, fast food. I would, eat that food. Then I got obese. And then just by the play of the cards too, I was born. And when I was born, there was a overflow of liquid in my ears. And so I think there was like the tube was wrapped around my neck and there was liquid, and it affected the way I talked as well. So now if someone looking in from a third party's perspective is, wow, Tyler's immediately at a disadvantage, right? And, he looks different, he sounds different. And here's the kicker. At a young age, I've always wanted to be a speaker. And so it's like, Statistically, I should probably not be a speaker. That's not what I got going for me. I don't look the part, and I definitely don't sound the part. But whatever your disadvantage is, it actually is one of the best blessings in your life, because throughout that process in like middle school, since I struggled to say my name and struggled to say certain words, I got put into special classes. I even had a woman or a teacher. I'll never forget it, Mrs. Fetterman. I have a report card on my website. But basically, in third grade, we would practice saying words. And so it was me and some other kids, and then some other kids wouldn't show up. So it was literally, I had this one-on-one speaking coach at a young age. And so, again, I was passionate about speaking, even though I had a speech impediment, even though I was overweight, all these things stacked, quote unquote, against me. It actually fueled to be my advantage, because I saw what it took to, be disciplined, stay consistent to something, and really articulate, be conscious of the words that you choose to say and how you pronunciate words, how do you communicate them to other people. And throughout that process, I just stayed the course, and it wasn't like I was getting paid speaking engagements as like I was in high school or anything, but I just kind of transitioned that into sports because I love community. I love being with other people. So again, that need of wanting to be a part of something bigger than myself was always present. And so I was like looking at other options. So sports were a great option for me. Played baseball, basketball, football. So literally went from football to basketball to baseball season. So it was back to back to back, all the way up until from like sixth grade to high school. That was pretty much my life. And that provided me opportunities to then go play overseas in China or play college football. And then I played overseas in China, in Beijing, basketball. And so again, sports were my whole entire life. And then throughout that process, that led me into, wanting to learn how to make money anywhere online, anywhere in the world. So when I was in China, I Googled how to make money online. And of course, I get hit with all these ads to purchase this, buy all the upsells. And, that introduced me to the internet marketing world about 10 years ago. And then through that process, I literally would just reach out to online brands, online influencers, agencies, and just said, hey, I would love to promote your product and service. And they said, yes, of course. And so, that started off as like a referral, like an affiliate referral fee.
Mhm.
That led into consulting with brands, getting equity in companies. And one of the companies I consulted for was a live event company, which I got a chance to work with all those personal development speakers that you said. And then now that's what we continue to do. We help business owners and speakers and C-level executives build their personal brands, build their organizations, help them to find their identity, help them to find their message within the marketplace. But it's also the same exact principles that I leverage and use throughout this process so I can find my purpose and my messaging and my story personally as well. And so that's kind of just a snippet, kind of talked about the younger story of my childhood, but also bringing you up to speed to where we are today.
I love it. I love it. And I saw that picture of you and Jack Canfield at that 3-day speaking event. What was it like meeting Jack Canfield? Of course, Chicken Soup for the Soul. What was it like meeting him?
Right. Yeah. That's it was life changing, man. Because during that experience, I was in college, and uh, I remember laying in my bed one day, and I did not want to get up and go to class. I was just like unmotivated. I'm like, man, there's more to life than this, and I was still getting clarity on what my next step looked like. And one of the guys that I would listen to and just kind of fueled the fire of wanting to speak more was Jim Rohn, which turned out to be the mentor for Tony Robbins. But if you haven't listened to Jim Rohn, check his stuff out. So that kind of put me into this personal development journey. And one of the events that was coming up was an event called Thrive in San Diego, which Jack Canfield was going to be the keynote at that event. And I remember looking at it, I'm like so excited. I was like, you know what? I don't have the money for this, nor do I have the availability. I actually have a final exam during like that Friday, and it was like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday event.
Yeah.
I have a final exam that day. And I remember going up to my professor, and I was always a good student. I always did the things that were in my control. And so I was never the smartest kid. I was never the smartest student, but I focused on what I could, which was my work ethic and my attitude. And so in classes, I would just put in the work, good grades. And so I had great relationships with my professors. And I was like, hey, man, I want to go to this event. And I showed them the lineup of speakers. Lewis Howes was another guy there. He actually went to school he used to go to Capital University, which was also in my division in Ohio. My teacher was like, "Oh, I love Lewis Howes. Have fun, go check it out. You could take the exam like earlier in the week, and you can take it then."
Mhm.
So I was like, okay, got that box checked off. And this is good for anyone listening because this is what it takes to be successful, to find a way. If you're really called to do something, you have to find a way to make it happen. And the stars will align, and it is possible if it's meant to be. And so got that checked off. And then I was like, okay, well, I need to get financials to fly out to San Diego, which is where it was. Cleveland is one of the most expensive airports to fly out of, except if you're going to Vegas, but which is another story. But it's expensive. I got to get room and board, and I got to pay for a ticket here and stuff like that. And so I actually take a loan from my brother. I'm like, hey man, I'll pay you back. I just need to go to this event. And that's when I saw Jack Canfield speak. And I just remember being in a community and being in an environment, all these entrepreneurs, and people are talking about their business. People are talking about, how they're making, $10,000 in a month, $10,000 in a week, $10,000 in a day. Like, $100,000 months, $1 million businesses, $10 million businesses, all these different things. And I'm like, I didn't even know existed because growing up in Cleveland, I always wanted to just make $100,000 a year. I was like, that's a really good goal. I'm happy with that. And I thought that was what was possible. And, that was kind of just what I knew to be true. But getting in that type of environment, seeing all that, and again, why are all those people there? To learn from people like Jack Canfield. And so Jack Canfield was the keynote at that event. And I just remember he was just an amazing speaker. People were crying, people were cheering, they were laughing, they gave him a standing ovation. And I was like, wow, I want to move an audience like Jack Canfield did. And I was a part of that audience. I was a part of, one cheering, standing up, wanting to take a photo with him. The one that you saw on my website as well. All that was culminated based off of not only what he did off the stage that got him to that point, but all his life experiences that he spoke about there. And one of the main things he talked about, which is that always stuck with me, was E plus R equals O. And I'm a big math guy, so I love equations like this. So E is the event, R is the reaction, and O is the outcome. So E plus R, so event plus the reaction is going to equal the outcome. And so events we can't control. If someone in our life dies, that something traumatic happens to us, whatever the case, an event, something happens in life, it is what it is. R is the reaction. How do we respond to this event? And we can respond negatively or we can respond positively, but depending on how we respond to that event is going to dictate O, which is our outcome. And so we actually have control over the outcomes in our lives if we can just take full responsibilities on how we react and respond to all the events and experiences in our life, good or bad, because things just are. And depending on if they're good or bad is going to be based on how you label it and how you respond and react to it, which is then going to determine the outcome. And so he really just, again, stoked the fire for me to be like, you know what? I'm on the right path here. I'm glad I took the risk, went out to this event, connected with some amazing people, learned, connected with some more people to consult with their businesses. And that, again, just gave me more ideas. I ended up starting like a company too. My first company, which is no longer existed, it failed. It's called a company called Fitness Native. It was a fitness apparel brand that I basically formed, after that event. And a percentage of the proceeds went to kids that struggle with obesity as well. So again, it's like these things that I experienced in my life, those are things that happen when you surround yourself with people that are smarter than you, that are doing bigger and better things like Jack Canfield. They inspire you to do things that maybe that you weren't planning on doing, or you didn't have enough courage or confidence to do before. But it just allows you and elevates you to go to that next level. But it was an incredible experience to answer your question.
Yeah. Well, I can see how all of that built for you. And now here you are. Your TEDx talk enabled you to reach over 2.5 million views. You became one of the top 500 most watched TEDx talks of all time. It's called How to Find Your Life's Purpose. Talk to our audience about how that particular talk has completely changed your life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, TEDx is such an amazing platform. I've always wanted to give TEDx talks. I remember in high school, one of our business classes in high school, they showed us Simon Sinek's Start With Why. That was the first time I ever got exposed to TEDx, and I'm sure you're probably familiar with that, and a lot of people are listening too. But basically, that talk was people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it, right? And so that was one of the most watched TEDx talks of all time. So that was on my radar for a while, and that was a little seed that was planted in my mind subconsciously that I always wanted to do. One of those things that I was thinking about before I got to the TEDx stage was I consulted with all these brands, and then it wasn't until we went to LA and went to a Tony Robbins event. And this Tony Robbins event changed my life too. This was also another pivotal moment in my career where people were 18 to 75 years old and they all walked on fire, right? And I'm like, wow, you just persuaded me to like burn my pinky toe because I didn't do exactly what he said and I kind of messed that up, but that's another story. But I ended up burning my pinky toe. All these people walk on fire. And then I just remember that event, people were throwing their credit cards to sign up for a platinum partnership program, which at the time I think was at $100,000. I think he charges $250,000, $500,000 now. And he was making millions of dollars in a day. And again, like I told you, $100,000 a year for me is just, would have been solid and great. And so that's when I was like, man, I'm in the wrong business. I should start my own live event business. Because another thing that was mentioned too was one of my mentors actually helped Tony Robbins develop business mastery. And he was like, that these events are all choreographed and they know, every second, every minute, every word that they're going to be saying, Tony Robbins has practiced it throughout. And, there's a process to this because we would then go from LA, we'd go to Dallas, we'd go to New York, we'd go to West Palm Beach, all across the nation. And it was the same event, same experience. And no matter where he was able to cultivate that incredible experience with people ending up signing up for his, $100,000 plus platinum partnership program. And I just remember, I need to start my own live event company. And throughout that experience, that's where I met my wife. That's how we threw our last event in Miami. Daymond John was our keynote speaker. So I got a chance to speak with him on stage. And so live events had changed my life. And then during that process, I was always like, I want to give a TEDx talk, but it wasn't until then, this was about 3 or 4 years ago, I was like, you know what? It's time. It's time to give a TEDx talk. I feel like I'm ready. I feel like I have the experience. And one of the questions I asked myself is, if I had 24 hours left to live, what would be the message I would want to share with my friends, my family, and my loved ones? And that I just wrote that down, and I really just put a huge emphasis on that. And one thing that kept popping up for me was purpose. Every consulting deal that I had at the time, I worked with a wide variety of companies. I had marketing agencies, live event companies, fitness, like fitness professionals, like high-end personal trainers, SaaS companies, logistics companies. One was even like a truck driver, recruiting company, all these different companies. And I realized the ones that I excelled and accelerated most at were the ones that I was passionate about, and the ones that I had purpose behind, ones that I felt like it was bigger than myself, because that's what all my sports teams that we won, my high school football coach would be like, you guys get to play football in high school senior year one time in your lifetime. This is not about you. It's something much bigger than you guys. And it's about contributing to the team, doing your job, and it's something much bigger than yourself. So again, these subconscious seeds in my mind, it always drove me back to purpose. And if it's being a faith-based entrepreneur as well, it's, I was praying about it too. And the Lord essentially downloaded the full entire talk for me. And it was just like, stewing in a pot for a really long time. And it took me about 2.5 to 3 years before I finally gave my talk, because, it wasn't easy. It's not something that like, hey, I want to give a TEDx talk. Let's go book it and give it tomorrow. There's a huge process involved with developing the idea, making sure it's original, making sure that you get placed on the right stage, developing and crafting the talk, making sure that you have speaking experience, making sure that you're a marketable speaker. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it, but at that time, things just culminated perfectly together. I put a lot of time and energy and effort into developing my talk. And one of the things that made the talk so successful, because when the talk did come out, like you mentioned, we went viral. We got over 2.5 million views. We had over 500,000. We were in the top 500 most watched talks of all time. Well, the average TEDx talk does about 400 views, and there's over 212,000 TEDx talks, like as the recording of this video. And I'm in the top 500 talks. Like it, as much as I would like to say, hey, it's me, and like I'm an amazing speaker and I have this amazing message, it was the Lord. The Lord gave me that message, and me simply staying obedient and staying in alignment with my purpose allowed me to speak from authority and ultimately speak with original content, because all the stuff that I said during that talk was original. It's not like I took it from this talk over here and kind of just added to it. No, all the stuff that I was saying was original, that and packaged in a way that was never seen before. So that's why we were able to get so much traction. And those are the makings of really good talks. And some of the things that I mentioned in it was, number one, how to find your life's purpose. And like you mentioned before, New York Times did a study that 25% of people know their life's purpose, leaving 3/4 of people wondering what that is. Well, if I'm looking to find my life's purpose, what's the first question I'm going to ask myself? I'm going to ask myself, why am I here? Right? So why is the solution? If I need to start with why, then that's clearly not the case. And if I quote unquote answer this question, why am I here? How can I truly understand if I've gotten that answer correct? Right? How can I validate that answer? And so that was really the foundation of my talk. I leveraged Simon Sinek's, strategy of like, start with your why. And my whole thing was, instead of starting with why, you end with it. And instead of making your life's purpose this huge, grandiose thing that, it takes a lifetime to figure out, I told them in the talk, I mentioned, I'm going to tell everyone what your life's purpose is today, and it's service. And the reason why I know we're called to serve one another and serve other people is because we are hardwired as human beings to do that. And it's called the helper's high. And I'm not a scientist. I don't, I was never good at science. But serotonin, melatonin, oxytocin, dopamine, all these chemicals get released in our brain when we serve other people. So that's why we feel good when we open on the door for an elderly person. We do something good, nice for our spouse or our loved ones or our friends, anything like that. And so high level, macro view, if you think of you have purpose and you have life's purpose. Life's purpose is like the North Star. No matter where you go, that's always going to be the same. And then the purpose in the micro, that's going to adapt and adjust depending on where you're at in your life. But your macro is you're called to serve. And then there's 3 levels of service. I can be serving myself, I can be serving others, or I can be serving my creator. And so essentially, I could be in the right vehicle. Like let's say I'm a college student right now. If I going to class, am I showing up every single day for myself? Am I doing it for my family? Or am I doing it because the creator of the universe has called me in this location, has called me to study this major, and has called me to be here and do what I'm called to do, right? And again, I could be enrolled at the same university, I could be enrolled at the same college, but if I can just understand who I'm serving, that's going to allow me to show up differently on how I approach classes, how I study, how I communicate with others, how I, build relationships with other students, how I build relationships with professors. Because through that process, when you serve the creator, simultaneously, instantaneously, you are going to be serving yourself and also others. And that's the beautiful thing about it. But it requires the humility and requires your acknowledgement and of something bigger than yourself to submit to, number one. So that's your macro. And then the micro is the first question I really need to be asking myself. Once I understand I'm here, I'm called to serve, and I'm going to be serving my creator, the first thing I need to look at is, who am I called to serve? And these are people that I can relate to, right? Like I'm not going to be able to relate to, let's say, mothers, single moms. Like that's just not my audience, because I can't speak from authority from their experiences that they have gone through. But what I can speak to are people that are athletes, people that have left the sport that they thought they were going to go professional at, but now they need to find a job. They need to find what the heck they're going to do with their life, aka their purpose and why they're here on this earth. Because at one point they're so fixated on, hey, you know what? I'm going to be professional. This is what I'm going to do for my life. This is it. And then whether it's an injury, whether you get to, the big leads and you're like, wow, I'm not as good as I thought or whatever, people transition. And the best example I always like to tell people is Michael Phelps. Is, he's at the pinnacle of his career, wins all these gold medals, more than he can count. And after he leaves the sport, what happens? He goes into a deep state of depression. Why? Because his identity is a swimmer. And so when you stop swimming, his value and his identity go away with it. And so now some people, like myself, I can get some Ben and Jerry's, watch some Netflix, binge watch Game of Thrones in a week, and then I'm like, all right, I'm back. I did that. Let's figure something out and let's go attack it. Where some other people, it doesn't really work like that. Sometimes it takes weeks, sometimes it takes months. Maybe sometimes they leverage substances during that process as well. Sometimes it's years, and maybe it's even a lifelong transition, or even people that go through midlife crises. People that think this is their life's purpose, this is what they're going to do, this is what they're called to do. They then have to make a transition, which then the next step is going to be some sort of confusion or depression or whatever the case may be. That could be a variety of different time lengths. Then the next step is like some sort of purpose. Then you're like, you know what? I think this is the right next step for me. So I'm going to get this job to provide for my family. I'm going to do this because I have the skill sets that's in line with my major, whatever the case may be. And then the last thing they need to look at is this bringing me peace, fulfillment, satisfaction? And am I excited to become better and go after this even more? Because if I'm not, I'm going to end up right back in square one. I'm going to go through a transition and I'm going to go through that process and cycle all over again. And so again, these are the concepts that I'm talking about. But again, who am I called to serve? What problems am I called to solve? And how am I called to solve that problem? That is the secret sauce behind how you can not only find your purpose, do something that you're passionate about, but also find something that you can actually get paid to do. Because the bigger the problem, the bigger the paycheck, right? Because if I can, let's say my who, people that are going through transitions, let's say athletes, college athletes transitioning into the real world, what problem do they have? They're struggling to find their life's purpose. And then the third part is, how do I help them deliver it? I deliver it through written content, speaking content, and online content. So a lot of different forms. And the how-to is the easiest part. A lot of people are like, hey, what do I need to be doing with my life? They focus on the what and all this other stuff. And then the end is, okay, I've gone through all that. I know I'm serving people that are going through transitions. The problems that I'm solving is struggling with their purpose. The solution is a myriad of different things: books, talks, keynote presentations, online courses and materials, one-on-one coaching, whatever the case may be. And then the final thing is, why am I truly doing everything that I'm doing? And I need to really evaluate that. And I need to honestly check myself, check my heart, check my mind, and say, you know what, am I truly doing this because I'm serving the creator? Or am I doing this because I'm doing it for personal gain and personal satisfaction, or whatever the case may be? Because the why is the validator. Because if I'm doing all these things just for personal gain, I have to relook at that equation. But if I go through and get to the end and I'm saying, you know what, I am helping a lot of people. I'm not doing this for myself. And I'm truly, genuinely doing it because I am here called on this earth to accomplish that. I mean, that's an unstoppable, you become an unstoppable force of nature that no matter who you are, where you came from financially, what you look like, what color your skin that you have, what city you live in, you can come from a place of authority. And the last thing I want to share with this, with the authority piece, is I want everyone to think about a police officer in the street organizing traffic, right? There's a difference between power and authority. If I'm in my vehicle and this police officer is just standing there directing traffic, I actually have more power than that police officer. I could technically run this dude right over. However, he has more authority than me. Why? Because he's a police officer, he's in uniform, and all he's doing is putting his hand up in front of me saying, stop and go. Since he has more authority, regardless of how much power I or he has, whoever has more authority is going to have more, is going to dictate the situation more. And so since he has more authority, he's going to be able to dictate that outcome. Well, if I can align myself with my God-given purpose and reason why I'm here on this earth, that's the highest level of authority, because now I am submitting my life and my purpose to the creator of the universe, who handmade me, hand woven me, had knit me, and that's the ultimate level of authority. And if people are listening to this, do believe in a creator of the universe, they understand that that has complete authority over everything here on this earth. And if I can align with that, submit to that, then good things are going to happen. I'm going to have more peace, prosperity, passion, all of those different things in my life.
I love the message. I think it really does resonate with fraternity and sorority college students today because you're talking about all the same things that we believe in. We believe in service, we believe in values. So that's really what you're talking about here. And I think that's one of the reasons why fraternities and sororities have been so successful over the last century plus. Is because we really are trying to align ourselves with service and values. Do we get it perfect all
100%.
the time? We don't get it perfect all the time. I mean, there are certainly problems in every industry. But for the most part, I think that's why it's endured, is because we're appealing to that greater sense of service, leadership, and values. And I think that's timeless, right? So I really love it. That's really, really good. All right.
Yeah,
So, I will say this, we do love good food here at the Fraternity Foodie podcast, as you might guess. And I know you're in Clearwater, Florida. So I'm wondering, when you and your wife decide that it's time to go out for dinner, maybe this weekend, you want to hit up a nice spot there in Clearwater. Is there a particular restaurant that you guys really like to go to? So that way I can
yeah,
hit that place up too?
yeah. That's a great question. Well, I got to give a shout out to my wife. She's one of the best cooks ever. So yeah, outside of her food,
Right.
depends on what you're looking for. I really like if you're looking for, I like authentic food, so I like authentic Mexican food. So
Yeah.
a really cool spot is Carmelitas.
Nice.
They have actually a few locations in Clearwater, Dunedin. Those are some cool spots. It's like authentic. It's not too crazy, but that's a really good spot. And then if you really want to come and experience something that's out of this world, there's two spots. If you're meat eaters, then there's a place called Meat Market. It's a hot spot in like Hyde Park, Tampa area, which is a really nice area for the up and coming young professionals. And you can usually get it if you make a reservation about a week in advance. You can make it happen. But they got a phenomenal steaks, the presentation, all that stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of celebrities and famous people go there. A great spot. Another one, which you have to plan for if you do come to Tampa, there's another one called Burns Steakhouse. Now, I've only been to the dessert room. It's like a steakhouse and it's also a dessert room. And it used to be an old funeral home. So when you're driving by and you look from the outside, you're like, I don't know about this place. But when you go into it, it's a really cool spot. It's world class, like the food, the service, and that place is usually booked out 2 or 3 months in advance at least.
Ooh.
So it's not like, oh, like, hey, do you want to go to Burns this weekend? No, it's like, let's go to Burns, like hopefully next summer. You know what I mean? So
Big
that's a
deal.
really cool spot. A lot of people come there. For like a jazz, there's a really cool spot for like cocktails and like a jazz bar is and another place called what's the I'm actually forgetting the name of it. It's in downtown Tampa. Or actually, it's right next to the Tampa Theater. I'll think of it, but it's a jazz lounge. Let me see. Actually, I can look this up. Tampa Theater. I can just pull up the map here. Let me pull this up. Um, yeah. I mean, my wife, we used to, my wife and I, we don't really drink or anything. And I know some
Yeah.
people like to drink, so that's why it's not really top of mind. But I know a lot of celebrities went there after the Super Bowl that was here in Tampa. Let
Uh,
me see. It's called like something lounge, but it's right next to the Tampa Theater. You can't miss it.
you can't miss it.
Um, yeah. I honestly forget the name.
No worries.
Let
Those
me
are some
see.
good spots. Those are some good suggestions. So now we have all kinds of places to go and check it out, whether it be Mexican or we got some burned steaks, whatever. We
Yeah.
got a little bit of everything. This is good.
Yeah, so oh yeah, the gin joint, that's what it's called. The
The
gin joint is
ginger.
is a great jazz spot. And then for sushi right next to it as well is called Haiku. That's also a really good spot too. So but yeah, if you guys have any questions about food, there's a lot of great food in Tampa and Clearwater and St. Pete as well. They're
Uh-huh.
all really close to with one another. And so definitely reach out to me on Instagram or LinkedIn. More than happy to give some more recommendations based off your preferences and stuff.
I love it, Tyler. All right. So if our student listeners, if they want to connect with you and bring you in to speak on their college campus, where should they go to connect with you?
Yeah, Instagram and LinkedIn are going to be the best methods. I'm on both of those platforms. You can also look me up at tylercerny.com, tylercerny.com. A lot of people think my last name is spelled with an S, but it's with a C. But yeah, if you search me up and just say Tyler Cerny TEDx Talk, I'll pop up on YouTube, on my website, LinkedIn, and Instagram. But again, Instagram and LinkedIn are probably the two best methods to get in contact with me.
I love it. It's Tyler Cerny. It's spelled Cerny. Definitely go and look up his TEDx talk. It's absolutely incredible. It's called How to Find Your Life's Purpose. It's got 2.5 million views and counting. So a lot of people are checking it out. I'm just really honored that you were able to share all of this great information with our listeners today. So thank you, Tyler.
You got it, man. And one thing I'll say too, that the kind of end the conversation with, and people can take away with this. One of the things I always like to tell people too, I just spoke in Chula Vista, California, and I asked the audience, like, how many of you drive vehicles? And they're all college students. They all say, yeah, of course. And then I asked, how many of you actually read the owner's manual? And people looked at me and they're like, like what's the owner's manual? I was like, that thick book in the glove department, that's the owner's manual. I say, okay. And then what about your iPhone? Have you read the owner's manual for your iPhone? They're like, wait, we have one? Yeah, absolutely. And so one thing to keep in mind is that if I, let's say, put the wrong gasoline, I put milk or juice in my car, and I look at my vehicle and I say, you know what, why isn't this thing working? It's because I'm out of alignment with the creator's purpose and divine intention for that creation, right? Because someone can only create something if it was only pre-made beforehand, right? And so if I come in and I try to dictate the purpose of something that's already been created by my own purpose and by my feelings and by my own intentions and thoughts, and be like, you know what, that car actually looks like it needs milk instead of gasoline. Well, I'm going to create some cognitive dissonance. I'm going to be frustrated. And that's the same thing with all of our lives. We're all have been handcrafted and hand designed. And the manual is the Bible. And if people can read the Bible, that's the manual to life. That's going to teach you how to have more fruitful relationships, more fruitful businesses, more fruitful everything. And it's going to allow you to find direction and clarity in all aspects of life. But I look forward to connecting with anyone. If anyone has any specific questions, whether they're Christians, they're not Christians, I love people. I love serving people. I love helping people. So if anyone has any specific questions or specific struggles or difficulties that they're going through, specifically when it comes to finding clarity on what that next step looks like, I'm here as a resource. I'm here to help you.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Tyler Cerny. Thank you so much for joining us. And to our listeners, if you enjoyed this talk with Tyler, I want you to like it on social media. I want you to share it with other college students. And we're going to see you on the next episode of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.